Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles when you show up.
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
And Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
Well, all right. Welcome back into Operation Domination. Another episode, another injury report, because we are getting ready for Week 5. Make sure you download Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app, and you can check out all of our video content when you go to the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mader, and I have the great, the one, the only, Mr. Dr. Brian Scott of Injured List Podcast on the show like I do every Thursday. Brian, what's going on, man? How you doing today?
Well, there's a lot going on, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well, but I can't say the same for your 49ers, Dan. I feel like we had the same. I feel like this is very repetitive every season.
Woof. Yeah, we're going to get into that conversation. I literally, so first of all, I typically do not put names that are playing in the Thursday night game, because we record on Thursday nights in the sheet, because most people are going to listen to this on Friday anyway, and I just keep them updated with that. You already know who's inactive going into the Thursday game. But I had to bring them up because all of these injuries have lingering effects. I want people to have an idea of what might be coming up. And then also I need to have a side conversation with you about this as well. We just have to get into it. It's driving me crazy. I'm glad
for your mental well-being. I feel like this is kind of like a personal counseling session for you.
It absolutely. I'm just lucky it's fantasy relevant. Otherwise, they have no place on the show. That's the whole point of it, and it's driving me crazy. I'm glad we record on Thursday nights because I don't want to actually have to watch this whole game right now.
There you go.
But we do have an ever-growing list, and look, I know as we get further into the season, the list does typically tend to grow, but this is nuts. I mean, the major fantasy relevant player injuries and the major injuries attached to those major players is what's crazy to me. I don't think it's been this bad in years past, at least not by Week 5 in my memory anyway.
No, well, the thing about this year too is like there's a lot of spillover still from last season. Right. So not only did we roll that into the new year, but now you've got, Week 5, and we've got a bunch of guys that are down for a lengthy period of time, if not season ending. So it's just when I thought last year couldn't get any worse, this year has gotten worse already.
Well, and then the icing on the cake is that we've officially begun bye weeks. So they're already a nightmare to begin with. We got 4 teams on bye this week.
Yeah.
Yep. So this just gets nuts. So let's just dive into this thing because we got to figure a lot out. Big name, Lamar Jackson, hamstring. Like, besides the ACL, probably the worst injury I'd want to see a guy like Lamar Jackson have going into this one. So what's your expectation here? When do you think he will be back?
I mean, they're saying week to week or even day to day. I think it's going to be more like week to week. But, you know, he's a physical specimen. He has not missed much time aside for some other injuries that he had early in his career. But I don't think it's serious. I think I would, this week for sure, he's going to be out. He's not even at practice today. And it sounds like he's going to miss week 5, no matter what he does on Friday. So let's assume it's a mild to moderate hamstring issue. Hopefully, maybe just some cramping or some tightness, not an actual strain. We could expect to see him back maybe in 2 weeks. So maybe week 6. Now, I don't know when their bye is. Keep that in mind. I have no idea all the teams' buys. But I'm a little bit more optimistic with him just because he's so incredibly important to the Ravens franchise. I think they're going to take care of him and treat him well and not do anything unnecessarily. So I'm going to go with that 2-week time frame as the most. Hopefully we'll see him back week 6. Again, I don't know what their bye week is, but now that buys have started, like you mentioned, that will definitely factor into how they treat guys going forward.
Well, I can help you on that front, Brian. So,
okay.
and this is it's big. It's part of this. Yep. Their buys week 7.
So there you go. That's what I'm saying. 2 weeks, then you basically buy a free week 7. So that's realistic. I think that's a strong possibility, depending on how he feels during treatments and next week's practices.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this like we're not going to see Lamar again until week 8. Now, you weren't going to have him week 7 regardless, but even still, when you say that and it's week 5, it does put a little bad feeling in your stomach. I can totally understand that. Hopefully, you've already made the adjustments that you need to make and found some quarterbacks of value on the waiver wire to make up for Lamar Jackson. And as far as like how that affects the rest of the Ravens offense, well, first of all, it's definitely a downgrade. They're not going to sustain drives the same way they would have if Lamar Jackson was back at the helm, right? That's the part that's obvious. Cooper Rush comes in to be the quarterback. We have seen moments out of Cooper Rush where he can be bearable, where he can get the ball to the guys that you need him to get the ball to. So like last year, right? Dak got hurt. He had to play weeks through 10 through 17. CeeDee Lamb was still the wide receiver 23 during that stretch. Now, that's not CeeDee Lamb numbers, but it's still a fantasy football starter. So it wasn't completely falling off the cliff. So I do think Zay Flowers, who already runs routes in the area of which Cooper Rush targets to begin with, I do think he'll get his volume. Will he get his efficiency? Will it be as many sustained drives? No, probably not. What does this do for Derrick Henry? It seems like people are falling on both sides of the coin. Some people think this is like the worst thing in the world could happen to Derrick Henry. Other people think he'll be okay. I tend to lean on the idea that he'll ultimately be okay. For if nothing more, then the Ravens' game plan has to become pound the football first. I know the caveat to that is that their defense sucks. And I don't know if their defense is getting any better because they're dealing with their own injuries. So it makes it hard to consistently stick with that. But I think that is at least their game plan going into these matchups without Lamar Jackson I'm with you, I think for at least the next 2 weeks, weeks 5, week 6. So I think Derrick Henry, if you got him, you had to play him. I think Zay Flowers is still a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. You're probably playing him more than not, especially as we get through the bye weeks. It's just a little bit of a downgrade ultimately. Now, maybe some good news on this part. Jaden Daniels dealing with that knee issue. What's the update on him?
Yeah, so if you remember last week, they were saying that they were awaiting evaluation by the physicians to medically clear him to play. And then lo and behold, Friday came and he did not get cleared. I was kind of skeptical about whether or not that was actually the case. I thought that the Commanders themselves were really kind of keeping him out as a precautionary measure, and that they were just using the clearance thing as kind of like an excuse to kind of take some pressure off of them and their fandoms. So lo and behold, he was cleared and practiced 2 days in a row fully with apparently no lingering effects that were noticeable. So he stated yesterday that he was going to be ready to play and he's going to be good to go. And it sounds like the physicians now have agreed and he should be starting this Sunday.
Now, from what I saw, and I don't know if you saw this as well, it looks like he's going to be playing with a knee brace this weekend. That's what I saw being reported.
Yeah, and listen, they never came out and said exactly what was wrong. I know he had an MRI. I don't think they ever divulged what the findings were.
Not really.
I thought he had an MCL sprain, which playing with a brace would make sense. It's only been a couple weeks. Even if it was a mild injury, by 2 weeks, usually most guys have recovered enough that you can confidently let them play, as long as there's no gross instability of the knee, which there probably wasn't. Otherwise, they would have addressed that. So a brace coming back the first week, not unusual to see, especially if it was an MCL, which, again, is what I believe it was, just based on all the kind of information we've been getting. So that doesn't necessarily surprise me. Now, will that hamper his mobility? Probably. Anytime you're a mobile quarterback, when you have to wear a brace, it's usually somewhat bulky, so it will, be uncomfortable. Those things are never quite right. They always kind of make athletes feel a little bit restricted, and they're not quite perfectly form-fitting. So you'll never be kind of as free and loose and as mobile as you were without it, and when you're 100% healthy. So keep that in mind. But he's going to play, and he might be slightly limited.
Well, and I wanted to touch on that part of it because we want Jaden Daniels to be mobile. That's where the fantasy value comes from. It's not from him throwing the football. He doesn't produce enough as a passer to really truly be fantasy relevant. So do you think he can be mobile?
I mean, he can. I just wouldn't expect his usual.
No, I agree with that. So for me, I have Jaden Daniels. Again, it's a bye week. If it wasn't a bye week, I wouldn't have him in my top 12. He does sneak in. I have him at quarterback 11 heading into this matchup. So I think you can, if you have him, you probably don't have a better option. You can go ahead and play him. I would just limit my expectations for what kind of production you're going to get out of him for this week. Maybe you take that and put in a boomer bust type of player somewhere else in your lineup to see if you can make up the difference. Depends on what your strategy and what's available to you. But I'm not expecting a huge game here out of Jaden Daniels this week until he gets his mobility back. We saw last season, he had the rib issue for like 3 weeks, and he was like fantasy irrelevant with the rib issue, just because of the pain that causes when you run football. So definitely something to watch here. Lower your expectations. Let's talk about Baker Mayfield, who's been, doing everything he can to win these games for his team late, and run around like a little banshee like he typically does. But he is picking up some injuries here. So he's got a bicep and a knee issue. Any concerns here?
Baker, he's a tough dude. He's tough as nails player. He's developed kind of this reputation as a hard-nosed physical quarterback. I don't see this as a major issue. He did return to practice on Thursday after missing an earlier session in the week, and was, I think, limited on like Wednesday. So not terribly concerning, given the fact that it's Baker, and historically speaking, he's a tough guy and doesn't usually miss time with minor injuries, which it sounds like these probably are. I'm not overly concerned.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. I do have him inside my top 12, actually inside my top 10 this week. All right, let's talk about our first 49er. Yeah, so Brock Purdy.
If only they had listened, to the previous episode that we did, they might have gotten some tips and pointers and done the right thing by it.
The 49ers listened to me since 95. We'd have like 5 more Super Bowls, but this is kind of where we are. So I don't think they're listening. So he re-aggravated the toe issue, right?
We said that was going to happen, man. Like,
yeah, we did.
Even though it wasn't a true turf toe, he had a turf toe variant, which is, it's essentially probably a sprain of that MTP joint, which is where the metatarsal and the toe kind of come together. That's an important joint in the foot. It's important for mobility, explosiveness, changing direction, agility. If you're not 100% and you go back out there, you're not going to give it enough time to get to 100%, and it's going to be a lingering issue. And now here we are, after 1 week back, he re-aggravated it, surprise, surprise, and now he's heading to the bench again. So even if he does head to the bench this week, right? I think their bye is like not till like week freaking 14.
Yeah.
What are you going to do the rest of the way? This is going to be a thing for the entire season.
Don't worry, they're going to play him in week 6, without a doubt.
Probably. And he probably will be right back here having the same conversation week 8.
I guess the only caveat is that it's a Thursday night game. So, he's not like he's getting extra time off because he's off anyway. So he's getting this week off. And then I guess we'll see what happens next week. And yes, you're right. We will be talking about Brock Purdy again next week. And we talked about this part of it too, is that Mac Jones may be more banged up than Brock Purdy heading into Sunday. That might have been the reason why ultimately. You know what you could do to alleviate that issue?
We definitely said that. We definitely said his timetable was accelerated because of the Mac Jones injury or aggravation of his PCL injury or whatever it was. So, yeah, that didn't they didn't do him right though by doing that. And it's an unfortunate situation. I guess they tried to go with the least injured of the two, and now that they have swapped positions.
Well, you know how you alleviate that situation? You don't have Adrian frickin' Martinez as your third string quarterback. Like, after Brock Purdy hurt his elbow, you made sure last season you had 3 quarterbacks who could come in and play. Why that philosophy changed, I have no idea. And the guy you have hanging out, who's actually the backup quarterback in a Thursday night game, has never thrown an NFL pass and don't even know who the hell this guy is. Like, what are we doing? Anyway, okay. I have more.
Russell Wilson might be available. Maybe
you can keep that one. I'd rather just go down with the sinking ship. Let's get into the running backs. I'll have more things to say about the 49ers. Bucky Irving foot ankle issue was in a cast and crutches. I'm not the medical expert. You are. I think that's a pretty bad sign.
That's a bad sign. I think I covered this. Did we cover this last week, or maybe I covered this on my podcast that I released on Tuesday?
Andrew's podcast, by the way.
Yeah. So apparently he had this injury to his ankle, or actually foot. I believe most of the reports are saying foot. And there are some video clips where they think he might have got hurt, and it didn't look good because of the way that he got injured. If that, in fact, was when he got injured, it was a bad sign because of the position his foot was in. Made it look like a pretty bad midfoot sprain. And I say midfoot sprain because I'm not going out on a limb and saying it was a Liz Frank injury. But reports came out saying that he was seeking a second opinion. And that, to me, was concerning, because that may have meant that when he saw the team physicians in Tampa Bay, they thought it might have been a Liz Frank. And then fast forward to Thursday, and reports came out saying he's in a boot on crutches. He's got an MRI pending, which I thought he actually had that pending a few days ago, and I still haven't heard about what that showed. It doesn't sound good. He's definitely not playing this week. This could end up being a several-week absence if that MRI comes back with anything significant in and around that Liz Frank midfoot area.
Yeah, I think that's what we're waiting on. So, like, the whole reason everybody even knew that Bucky Irving was banged up is because when they asked Todd Bowles, he had mentioned several players getting MRIs, and that Bucky Irving was actually one of them. We didn't get to hear.
He came out toward the end of the first half, which is when we think this happened, but then he came back in and played the rest of the game. So,
played well, too.
Yeah.
At that. I mean, well, at least he had the big play anyway. Yeah, so it was a really weird thing all the way through. Did you see Todd Bowles' comments this week? So reports were saying that it's week to week, right? Okay, fine. Todd Bowles was like, if he can get out of the cast by Friday, he's playing Sunday. I'm like, okay, Todd, whatever you have to say. Yeah, so. that's not happening. No, it's Rachaad White time. No, Rachaad White is actually my top 20 of running backs. Got him at running back 18 heading into this week. I'm expecting a large workload. Now, I know that it's a tough matchup against Seattle. Couple things. One, keep in mind, again, 4 teams on bye. Your options are limited to begin with, plus the injuries. 2, Seattle, while they've been tough on the ground, they have allowed the 7th most receiving yards to the running backs. And that's all I care about when it comes to Rachaad White. I don't care about the rushing. He's inefficient, whether it's a good defense or a bad defense, doesn't matter. I just want him to catch the ball. And that is a matchup that can be had against Seattle. So he is a top 20 running back for me heading into this week. I don't think Sean Tucker is going to make this a committee of sorts. Okay, so with that, Trey Benson, how short-lived it was when we all it's like, Trey Benson's going to get his opportunity. James Conner's gone. And yep, that lasted for about 3 quarters. So what do you got on Trey Benson?
Hot minute. So apparently MRI revealed some type of meniscus injury, and I think they're recommending arthroscopic surgery at the very least. And he's been placed on IR, so 4 games minimum, not weeks, games. Best case scenario is just an arthroscopy, meaning they go in there with the camera, some instrumentation, look inside the knee. If they see this meniscus injury, they clean it up, no repair needed, and no other damage seen, and starts his rehab, and he's back in that 4-week time frame. He might need a week or 2 just to amp up, but if it's that straightforward and that simple, you could expect him back once he comes off IR, maybe the following week. If it's a little bit more involved, it could extend.
Yeah, so like the timeline that was getting reported was 4 to 6 weeks. That
makes sense, because that maybe 2 weeks to amp up his activity once he gets on the field and starts doing stuff. But depending on what they do, it could be as quick as that 5th week. So, once he misses that 4th game, it could be the following week.
Yeah. So in his stead, now we're down to Michael Carter and Amari Demercado, the whack-a-mole who won't go away. He always finds a way to pop up every single season somehow in our fantasy football waiver wires. I'm reading this, and this seems to be what's getting reported out of Arizona. I'm reading this as Michael Carter is going to more so assume, more or less, the Trey Benson, James Conner role, being the early down starter running back, and Amari Demercado is going to maintain his passing down role, but maybe passing down plus. Ultimately, I look at it like this. It's going to be a committee. I think Michael Carter is going to get the majority of the carries. Amari Demercado is going to get a majority of the targets, which automatically, no matter if it's PPR, standard, half-point PPR, doesn't matter, automatically makes Michael Carter the more fantasy football relevant running back, because Kyler Murray is not checking the ball down to the running backs this year. It just hasn't been a thing. So I'm going with Michael Carter here. I do have him as running back 26 heading into the week. So a high-end RB3 that I think you can play in a tough, spot start here, as you're going to need to in some situations. That's where I am leading. I am not really on the Mercado aspect of it. The other thing here too is that it's probably not going to be pretty. It's probably not going to be efficient. They at least have a nice match against Tennessee for this week. Michael Carter at least has the explosiveness to make a big play potentially out there. Demercado doesn't. We know exactly what Demercado is going to do. He's just going to catch the ball 3 yards, fall down. That's what he does. So, give me Michael Carter if they have to need a spot start there. Oh, don't worry. We have another running back with another knee issue. Braelon Allen got banged up in that Monday night game. What's going on with him? Because it seemed to be some mixed reporting as far as him seeking a second opinion from what I saw.
Yes, I believe he did. And I believe that they did an MRI, and some reports have said that he has a sprained MCL and he's been placed on IR. And I think I actually posted about this on my X account. That's kind of what we thought was going to happen. His injury looked a little bit worse than Jaden Daniels, and his MCL sprain was probably more severe. And in that case, you're looking at least 4 weeks. So I don't think surgery was recommended, although that could have been why he was seeking a second opinion, because there's a chance that they may have said, hey, this knee feels unstable. This is more significant than we think the MRI is even showing, in which case they may have recommended or offered him a surgical repair of that MCL. Not always do you need that, but it may have been something that they offered. It could have been one of those, on the fence. Maybe you fix it, maybe you don't. Do you do it now? Do you wait? So I think that's probably why he sought a second opinion. And chances are they probably said the same thing or gave him an option of treating it conservatively, and that's what he opted for. So it sounds like he's just going to be on IR and rehabbing this, and we'll see him back in probably 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing here too. So how does that all break down for fantasy wise? Well, first of all, Isaiah Davis gets into a much larger role. So the passing situations in that Monday night game, 70% of the long down and distances, 29% of the routes run. And remember, it was still early in the game. It was in the first half, but we were past the first quarter by the time Braelon Allen got hurt. So it's not going to be all Breece Hall. Breece Hall is not going to go to a 90% snap count. That's not what's on the table here. Isaiah Davis is going to get worked in. So if you're in PPR leagues, because Davis actually has some explosiveness to him, I do think that's a pickup you can make. On the flip side, Breece Hall, this is good news for Breece Hall owners, because finally, we don't have to sit there and bite our nails and hold our breath anytime the Jets get inside the 10-yard line, which is not often, by the way. And Braelon Allen comes in there and steals the touchdown that Breece Hall set him up for in the first place. So Breece Hall will get more of those opportunities, which gives him a nicer ceiling because he has more of an opportunity to score with Braelon Allen out of the mix. It just kind of consolidates a little bit what's going on in that backfield for the New York Jets, and we need consolidation. Here's another one. Chuba Hubbard. Yeah. So this has been a developing situation here. He was banged up a little bit with the calf last week, but there was never really any doubt he was going to play. Didn't practice yesterday. Didn't practice Thursday. We have to wait to see what he does on Friday, but what do you got?
Yeah, this could be a true weekend game time thing. Sounds like that calf isn't completely healed, which, again, not surprising if they put him out there last week and it was an issue the week before. So this kind of sounds a little bit reminiscent of Christian McCaffrey. These things don't heal very quick. Calf strains can be very painful and very limiting when you do have them. So the fact that he was able to play through it is actually quite impressive. The question is, do you continue to push through this, or do you give him a week of rest and hope that it gets a lot better? I think that would be the wise thing to do. And maybe that's what they're leaning towards now that he's got 2 days where he hasn't stepped on the field. But, I mean, we're at the point in the season where he probably doesn't need to be out there Friday doing much anyway before they can make that decision. I think it's truly going to come down to how he feels on Sunday or whatever time they play, and whether or not he's able to push it in warm-ups and if he feels like he's good to go. If he is, and they do let him play, this could be one of those situations where you may see limited snap count or some limited action based on how he's feeling. So this is definitely something I would keep an eye on well into the weekend. right before kickoff.
I really don't like it when my running backs have calf issues. It's a very scary situation, and I should know because I'm a sick CMC fan. Anyway, and it sucks too because the Carolina Panthers finally have a plus matchup. They're playing against the Miami Dolphins this week, so this was a week where you thought like, okay, cool, I can get a blow up Chuba Hubbard's spot, and that's probably not going to be the case. But if he's out, and he needs to be out for this to happen, but if he's out, Rico Dowdle becomes very, very interesting. And I can't imagine there's too many leagues out there where he's still available on the waiver wire at this point. But if he is, pick him up. Because if Chuba Hubbard's out, you got a matchup against the Dolphins. Dowdle will be a top 24 running back in my rankings if there's no Hubbard to take away carries from him. And Dowdle's already been getting more of the work inside the 5 anyway. He's already the guy who's been scoring, regardless. That's what's been so insane about Hubbard's value this year. It's gone down because Dowdle, little pigeon Dowdle somehow is the goal line back. I don't know how that happens, but it does. And the Dolphins are allowing the 7th most fantasy points to the running backs right now. So, yeah, if you have Dowdle, pick him up, especially if you need him for Chuba Hubbard. This is something you're definitely going to need to watch. Is this running back going to come back? Tyjae Spears, dealing with the ankle. He's finally eligible to come back off the IR. What do you got?
So he's in that 21-day window. He actually did practice him in limited fashion. So once you step back on the field and do stuff, you've now activated that 21-day window. So we'll see how he does. He had this ankle sprain. I think it was a high ankle sprain back in the preseason and started the season on IR. So he's missed the mandatory 4 games. Here we are, week 5. I don't think he's going to be ready this weekend, but I expect that next week he'll ramp up his activity, get into a full practice. If he can get a couple of full practices in, I think that's what he'll need before they're ready to put him out there.
Okay, so I don't think he's going to be back this week then, based on that. And I would agree with you in that sentiment.
I don't think so.
Here's the issue. We've always been excited about Tyjae Spears because of his explosive ability. We know what he can do as a pass catcher. And there's probably a number of teams out there who've been holding on to him, waiting for him to come back. Again, always looking for running backs wherever you can find it. And I understand that. I got a few leagues myself where I have him in that situation. The Titans are so broken. And with Spears, what you count on is his receiving ability. Like when both him and Pollard are healthy, Pollard's the lead runner, and then Tyjae Spears spells him a little bit, but mostly gets us work on passing downs. There's been 10 targets to the running back unit to the first 4 games. I don't know if Cam Ward knows how to throw the ball to the running backs. He needs to because he's getting sacked on every other play, but it doesn't seem to be happening. So with that, knowing how the Titans are playing, knowing that we still have to wait a few more weeks for Tyjae Spears, if you had that IR spot, you've been holding him this whole time, continue to hold him. But if you have to make a move because it's a bye week, it's okay to drop him because I don't know what his value is truly going to be given the state of this team. That's the sadness of it all. Maybe it just takes over Tony Pollard, but that at this point, I think you have to kind of view him as a handcuff to Pollard, not necessarily as a guy who can give you PPR points as a backup in this situation because it's just untenable. Let's get into the wide receivers. Your team just never fails to disappoint for the show. So Malik Nabers, devastating ACL. What's the timeline here? When do you think he'd be back next year?
In 9 to 12 months is what you could expect.
Was it a clean tear? Do you know?
As far as I know, yes. However, I don't even know if he's had surgery yet. And I could be wrong. But if that's true, that may mean that there might be additional structures that are injured, which is not unusual with ACL injuries. It's pretty rare, actually, that you'll have just an isolated injury. Usually you'll have some type of associated ligament injury or possibly a meniscus tear or possibly all 3, the unhappy triad, we call that. And that's not unusual with ACL tears. Now, watching his injury, it looked pretty straightforward. But the fact that he hasn't had surgery, if we're correct in that assumption, could mean that he's dealing with some swelling in the knee. He might require what we call some prehab, where they will start to do a little bit of therapy to try and get some of the swelling down, restore some of the motion before going forward with the procedure to reconstruct the ligament and address any other structures that might be injured. And the reason for that is if you don't and you rush too soon to surgery, outcomes can be much worse. They can develop a lot of scar tissue, adhesions, which can make the knee very stiff. and really put a kink in the therapy and the protocol going forward. So you try to minimize the amount of soft tissue swelling, fluid inside the knee before doing this major reconstruction. So that could be why he hasn't had it yet. Sometimes that may take a week, maybe even 2. So it pushes the timeline back a little bit. The grand scheme of things, it's not a tremendous amount of time. And you're better off waiting than rushing to do something before you've had a chance to get that swelling down. So that could be what he's dealing with. I haven't seen any reports about what else the MRI showed, just that it confirmed that he had the ACL injury, which we kind of knew already. So 9 to 12 months is realistic window of time, regardless of what else they have to do during the ACL reconstruction. But, as we've talked about before with players, it can be upwards of sometimes 18 months before guys are really back to normal, comfortable enough to step back on the field. We've seen that before. It can be almost 2 years before they're back to feeling 100%, and they're kind of past that point of possible re-rupture. Usually, if you can make it to that 2-year mark, the incidence of re-rupture goes down dramatically. So you get to that 2-year mark and everything's good, you're in the clear. So until that point, we're always a little bit cautious and weary of guys coming off that injury and surgery.
You're in the clear unless you're Nick Bosa. Sorry, I had to throw that out there. So Malik Nabers is going to be that age-old question when next year's drafts. Like, do you take the guy because he's going to be on a discount? Do you take a guy because you know what type of player he can be, but because he's coming off the ACL, he's going to probably be, a 3rd or a 4th rounder instead of that 1st rounder that he typically is in fantasy football drafts. And that's what we'll be tackling again next season. As far as this season goes, he vacates 27% of the targets. Now it's the Giants. Not a ton of targets, not always the most quality targets, even with Jackson Dart back there. However, targets are targets, and we need to find replacement level players for situations like this. Wan'Dale, Slayton, Theo Johnson. They all get a bump statistically to some degree. If you ask me to pick one, it is Wan'Dale. Between the Brian Daboll scheme and where Jackson Dart just naturally likes to throw the football, which is middle, short to intermediate part of the field, that's where Wan'Dale operates. So I think there will be a natural connection as far as that goes. Don't think of it as anything more than a wide receiver 3 and a spot start during bye weeks. I wouldn't get overly excited. I know Wan'Dale has had these moments where he's popped off. Like last year, had an insane amount of targets, even though no one knew because it didn't really come with any production. And a couple weeks ago, where he actually had major production in that game against the Dallas Cowboys. It's just a spot start situation. So if you have depth, you need it. That's where it goes. I'm not overly excited about any of these guys suddenly becoming majorly fantasy football relevant. This one was nasty.
Before we get into this,
okay,
I have to jump in because
it's Giants. You gotta try. Yeah, absolutely, you gotta chime in.
It's kind of funny because there were some quotes in some of the local New York papers about how Nabers was pulled Jalen Hyatt aside, who's basically moving up into fill his role, and was like, "Now's your time to shine." And I'm like, "This guy's had like 3 years, dude. Like, it ain't happening."
Done nothing.
Okay, he's done nothing. And we're talking about a dude who was like the Fred Biletnikoff, like college receiver of the year award winner, like his senior season. So, hey, maybe, right? Maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe this is the chance he's been waiting for. I don't know. But now you got a rookie quarterback there making his second start. Do you really expect big things? I wouldn't pick up any of these Giant wide receivers for fantasy purposes, and I'm a Giants fan. So that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, no, and I hear Jalen Hyatt. It's not even like he has 3 years, but this is a new coaching regime. This is the same coaching regime that took him in the first place, and he's done nothing to get on the field. I don't have high hopes for it either. All right, so Tyreek Hill, I saw this injury live, and I was like, oh, my face just cringed. I'm like, his leg is not pointing in the correct direction. Oh, it was brutal.
Yeah, severe injury. One of the few severe injuries we've seen before on a football field. Marcus Lattimore, the running back for University of South Carolina a few years ago, had this happen to him. He's a running back. He got hit, dislocated his knee, not kneecap, not ankle, like knee, the knee joint, which is a severe
hard
injury.
No?
Say again?
That's hard to do, I would have to imagine, no?
It's hard to do. especially on the football field, it's usually more akin to like a traumatic car accident or something like that, or a fall from a height. You don't see this a lot in sports, but when you do, it usually is exactly how it happened. Either a direct contact, like what Marcus Lattimore had a few years ago, who, by the way, at the time of his injury, was a projected first-round pick coming out of University of South Carolina. He ended up falling to the 6th round and never played in the NFL. Just to show you how significant.
Drafted by my San Francisco 49ers, by the way. Okay.
Yeah. So just to show you the significance of that injury. And that's, after it's been treated. The immediate concern with this injury is at the time of when it happens, you have to be very concerned about neurovascular injury to the arteries and nerves in the back of the knee, because most of the time when this injury occurs, the knee is dislocated posterior or toward the back, meaning the tibia gets shoved backwards and rotated and basically almost like damages all the structures in the back of the knee. And so the reason he was taken quickly to the hospital and remained overnight for observation is so they could do some tests and make sure that he didn't develop what's called a hemarthrosis, or bleeding inside the knee due to damage to one of those vascular structures, because that would have necessitated emergent surgery. Now, he didn't have that, thank goodness. Neither did Marcus Lattimore. But what's weird about this whole situation to me is that they're saying that he's already had surgery and that's it. They're not expecting to do another procedure. That is unheard of with this particular injury. 99.999% of the time with this, it's you do staged procedures, meaning you will address some of the ligaments that have been torn to cause the knee to dislocate initially, and then come back and reconstruct usually the ACL secondly or lastly. And the reason for that is if you do it all at the same time, there's a much higher incidence of people developing complications, getting a tremendous amount of scar tissue to form inside the knee, in and around the newly reconstructed ligaments, which can really, really hamper their rehab and set them back a significant amount of time. It can really complicate the rehab. So historically with this injury, and I've been doing this for 20-something years, we almost always stage these procedures and fix. So I have a feeling that the information coming out is not accurate. I think he might have more surgery ahead of him, despite what they're saying out of his camp. The bottom line is this is season ending, but more importantly, career threatening. Like, this is something that, as a guy like Tyreek Hill, who's a receiver and relies on his speed, which is his biggest asset, this can derail any potential chance of seeing him perform at the level, or even close to the level he was at before this.
Well, and this is a 30-year-old type wide receiver, too, on top of it. Correct. The age is a factor.
And then throw in the age on top of everything else. The age is almost just like a little sprinkle of, dust. Like, that's even the least of the problems. Even if he was 22, this is a major, major thing.
Yeah, brutal. One thing to lighten the mood, though. Do you think it's that Tyreek Hill's crazy, or is that he was actually happy that he doesn't have to play for the Dolphins anymore? Because, he didn't even look like he was in pain. He was smiling. Yeah. I'm like, how are you smiling and joking and your leg is bent in the opposite direction? Like, what is happening right now?
What I'll say to that is everybody deals with pain differently. I'm sure he was hurt. I'm sure he was hurting. How he manifested that is not probably how you and I would have done it, or the majority of people.
I would have been a little ball on the floor crying my eyes out.
Exactly, and most people would. But that's probably just how he handled it, and I'm sure that deep down he probably was like, "Thank God I don't have to step back on that field with Tua and the rest of this team." And I'm just gonna go chill and hang out with my 30 kids and a couple of baby mamas and get pampered while I recover and make my money, which is guaranteed, and I'll be fine. Maybe I'll play one day again, but not for the immediate future.
He finally got the hospital ball to end all hospital balls, basically. Oh, geez. Yeah, so he goes out. What happens, and I talked about this yesterday on the show. So make sure you go back, download Operation Domination, check it out on YouTube, because we talked about how this has to be Jalen Waddle's time to shine. We've been begging for Jalen Waddle to get more consistent opportunities. It has really not been the case since Tyreek Hill has joined the team, and we haven't really seen it since Waddle's rookie year as a result. Well, now it's here. So, one, Mike McDaniel, can you please give him the ball like you're supposed to? Because it's been kind of questionable at times that you're actually going to use the guys you're supposed to when you do. But two, Waddle, we know what your talent profile is supposed to be. Can you capitalize on the extra volume headed to you? That is the question that we need to see. So 25% of the target share vacated. Jalen Waddle, I'm trusting he's going to get the ball more, is a wide receiver 13. So the high end wide receiver 2, almost borderline top 12 guy for me heading into this week against Carolina. Play Jalen Waddle. Okay, CeeDee Lamb, ankle issue. What's the update?
Yeah, I think there was some video of him like kind of doing some light stuff on the sideline earlier this week, which is good. I mean, that's kind of where he should be. I still wouldn't necessarily change the overall outlook. It's going to be between 3 to 4 weeks. I think they're going to stick to that, which I think would be the smart thing to do as well, because we've seen guys try to come back too soon from these injuries, and it lingers for a while, and the risk of re-injury is high. So while I'm encouraged by what I saw, I'm not necessarily inclined to change the timeline.
Okay. Well, and I agree with you. I don't think there's any rush to bring him back. I mean, Dallas, look, as long as they go like 500 and are competing for a wild card spot, that's going to be a win for this team anyway. So I don't think there's any real reason to rush him back. Regardless, George Pickens still gets the ample boost here on the volume. Keep playing him like you had him. Let's get to the Commanders. Terry McLaurin, who's been on this list before, but we also have Deebo Samuel. Kick it off with McLaurin first to see what our update is.
Not much. I mean, we apparently still dealing with this quadriceps issue. I don't think we've ever really gotten definitive information about what exactly the injury is. We'll surmise that it's a strain of the quadriceps. I know when it first happened, it sounded like he was seeking multiple opinions. There's usually not anything surgical for this, unfortunately. But they're already ruled him out for week 5, so we're not going to see him. On the flip side with Deebo Samuel, apparently on Thursday he was a non-participant. Some reports stated that he was doing some drills and doing a little bit of rehab work on the side. I don't know exactly what the issue is. They're saying heel, could be some plantar fasciitis, could be something chronic that maybe became acute, might have just flared up on him. I don't recall a specific injury. I didn't see any reports about a specific play. So, we'll see what he does on Friday. I don't know if that's necessarily going to determine whether he plays or not. I think he'll probably play through this. But this could be something that pops up from time to time going forward if that's what it is.
Yeah, and just like Deebo fashion, he finds a way to be a little bit banged up and leaving you wondering about Sunday. No McLaurin. We got to see about Deebo. What does that mean if Deebo were to miss? Zach Ertz gets a boost. You want to play Russian roulette with Luke McCaffrey and Noah Brown got ruled out too, by the way. So that's out of the question. Jalen Lane, have at it. And this is another reason why I'm not super big on Jaden Daniels heading into this week, even on a heavy bye as well, because other than Zach Ertz, I don't even know who he has to throw the ball to, on top of probably being limited as a rusher, just to kind of bring that back full circle in this one. So we'll keep our eyes on what's going on with Deebo. Cedric Tillman, hamstring, IR already. So how bad do you think this is?
It must have been pretty bad. Yeah, I mean, and that's just on IR, right? Now you throw in 21-day window. There's no guarantee he's going to be back the first week. This could stretch out that entire time, which now you're looking at like 7 weeks. That would be not unusual if he went on the IR that fast. That tells me it's probably pretty bad. Maybe not surgically bad, because you can have all different types of hamstring strains. You can have it in the middle of the muscle tissue. You can have it more toward the insertion down by the knee. You can have it up higher in the origin, up in the glute region, which is where a lot of the traumatic ones happen, which require surgery. So the other ones can happen anywhere in between, essentially anywhere along the course of that muscle tissue. So it must have been bad. To go on IR that quickly tells me that you might not see him back for more than 4 weeks.
That's my feeling as well. Now, in the well with Tillman, I know he's a wide receiver 4 tier at best, and this Cleveland Browns offense is a disaster. But as we know, Joe Flacco is benched. Dylan Gabriel's in. Not a Dylan Gabriel fan, but that's just one more step closer to Shador Sanders. I can't believe I'm pulling for Shador because I was the guy who was saying his profile is no better than a third rounder when everybody else was trying to make him a top 2 pick in the NFL draft. But he is the best quarterback on the Browns. And it's kind of crazy that he's not even really getting a shot. It's not. Dylan Gabriel stinks. He's too small. He doesn't have an arm. He's not that mobile. This is not going to go well. The only way it goes better than what it was with Joe Flacco is that they'll probably line him up under center maybe a little bit more often and not just line him up in shotgun and let him get killed. That's the only thing that might look a little bit better on Sunday. Production-wise, I don't expect much of a change here. And unless you have Quinshon Judkins, maybe Harold Fannin, because Gabriel probably will target the tight ends in this one. Njoku, Fannin a little bit. I'm not touching anything on the Browns fantasy-wise anyway. Judy also, you can add to the list of players that just suck. Calvin Ridley, knee and elbow issues going on the last couple of weeks, but it does seem to be bothering him more so this week. What's your update on him?
I don't got much here. I don't recall any specific injury. Like you said, I think he'd been dealing with this before this week. Didn't practice, I think, earlier in the week and then was limited on Thursday. So, 50-50 here. I'm sure he's going to carry a questionable tag heading into the weekend, and he might get some more work done in on Friday, which might be more telling. But, watch as you go forward into the weekend and look for game time call on this one, but not too much specifics out there.
Regardless, you're putting him on the bench, even if he was playing. I actually want them to roll him out because, like I said, 2 games in a row now, he hasn't been able to really finish the game fully. He's been kind of in and out of the lineup. That's why he's been the wide receiver 4 in snaps on the Titans. Because of that, just sit out. And if you don't have an IR spot when he does sit out, go ahead and drop him. Because Alec Ayo Manor, if I can get the name right, he's been the number 1 wide receiver. And he's not really fantasy relevant in 10, 12-man leagues either. He's just kind of a dart throw that you can kind of take a shot on here or there. This doesn't add anything else to Ayo Manor's, target share because, like I said, Calvin Ridley's been in and out of the lineup anyway. And just to put a pin on it, Ridley's been the wide receiver 77 fantasy points per game. Move on. What are we doing? All right, so Michael Pittman, hamstring issue. This popped up today because he practiced in full yesterday, and then he was a limited participant in practice today or Thursday.
Yeah, so while that is a little bit more encouraging because maybe it was just some cramping or some tightness he felt. They are saying it's day to day. So now Friday usually don't do much, but that could be his time to test it out before the game. So it's something to certainly keep an eye on. This could be a true game time decision. I don't think they're going to push him through it. If he has any discomfort or tightness or soreness in that hamstring, they might rule him out on game day. That wouldn't be unusual. I think the fact that Alex Pierce, who we're about to talk about, is coming back from concussion, and then you got Josh Downs, who's somewhat healthy. He was on the injury report a couple weeks ago and came back and has not had any other issues. They might be more inclined to sit Pittman this week if he's got any type of soreness or discomfort.
Which is huge because Pittman's been great for. Who would have thought Daniel Jones revives the fantasy value of Michael Pittman? But that's exactly the case. Pittman's the wide receiver 15 on points per game in a heavy bye week. People need Michael Pittman right now because I thought, at least personally, that Josh Downs was going to be the guy because we know how much Jones loves throwing it to the slot wide receiver. Well, that really has not been the case. It's been pretty much all Michael Pittman all the way. Now, if he's out, does that open up some targets for Josh Downs? Is he a sneaky little flex play? Yeah, probably. Alec Pierce, if you want that big shot play, potentially. Want to take a dart throw? Maybe. But you want Pittman right now because he's been playing really well. You got a nice matchup against the Raiders who can't cover wide receivers. They're doing everything else decently on that team, actually, defensively. I've been a little bit impressed with what Pete Carroll's done with that team defensively, but wide receivers are still lighting them up. So it does make it a little bit tricky. You do need to watch this. So Alec Pierce, so you think he's going to come back from his concussion issue?
Yeah, he's practiced in 2 straight days in full. So that tells me that he probably didn't have any side effects after the first full session, which means he's one step closer and nearing clearing the protocol. So there's almost no way at this point now that he's going to go backwards if he hasn't already. heading into the weekend. So I think he'll clear protocol and be out available.
All right, well, that's good news there. Back to my 49ers. Okay. So
I don't even really know what to say.
We know they're already out. Whatever.
Right.
So Jauan Jennings, rib, shoulder. I feel like I'm missing something. Ankle. Yeah. Okay.
That was the thing I think that was keeping him out last week, and then I don't even remember the rib part. I don't know.
We picked up the rib
shoulder. I think at one point it was shoulder.
Yeah. No, a little bit of everything, and then Ricky Pearsall, minor PCL sprain. Okay.
Yeah, which is what we thought the week before because he was dealing with the knee issue,
right.
And he had a history of this or something. I read in a few reports, but then he played, and boom. Now they're saying he actually sprained his PCL.
Well, that's what happens when you're trying to, the only guy out there making catches and you land straight on your knee. Like, I can't blame him for it. So I guess my question more so is, what do you think their prognosis is past week 5?
Well, I think Pearsall is actually I'm more optimistic about him coming back sooner than Jauan Jennings. I mean, despite the fact that this dude, Jauan Jennings, has a contract that's incentive laden on him playing, and yet he still hasn't stepped out there, and this is going to be week 2 now that he's on the sideline again. I don't know. I mean, the 49ers were smart, I guess.
Here, Jauan played on Sunday against Jacksonville. That's where he picked up the rib issue at. Just didn't last very long.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, they knew what they were doing when they put this contract in front of him, because obviously he can't make it through a full game.
So let me ask you this, because this is a conversation that's been going on, and I have to think there's something to it. The 49ers under Kyle Shanahan have been it's not even close, by far the most injured team. And I've heard all kinds of, explanations about why they think this is. Some of the practices might be harder than the rest of the NFL, yada, 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 yada. When you see a team like this, it can't just be luck, right? Can't just be luck.
Well, here's the thing, Dan. Usually when I do my Super Bowl episode, I go back and I look at some of the injury statistics throughout the league. And almost year after year, you'll see the teams that make it far, whether they be at the Super Bowl or the conference finals, conference championships. Those teams historically are the ones that have lost the least amount of time to injuries throughout the year for their players. Eagles, last 2 years, have been like top of the list. And no surprise, they've been successful. And a couple other teams. Now, the 49ers just a few years ago were up on that list. And there was one year where they were actually in the conference finals or championships or whatever, when Brock Purdy, I think, made his kind of debut. And all their injuries happened early in the year. And they got all their guys back toward the end and went on a big run. So timing plays a lot.
Hope right now? Trying to give me hope? Is that what you're trying to do?
Don't wave the white flag yet. Don't throw in the towel.
Well, until they trade for
but you were right. You are correct in that there has to be something going on here, whether it be the players themselves are not doing what they need to do to adequately prepare for the upcoming season, whether something with their training regimen or their practice schedule, something. There's usually something that could potentially be causing this. And I can guarantee you that the medical staff has looked into it. The training staff, the performance coaches that work with the team, I'm sure the coaching staff has also looked into it. And maybe they just can't pinpoint any one thing. They just got a bunch of players that maybe are just physiologically not quite made up of the fibers that are necessary to make it through an NFL season unscathed. I don't know. That could be it too.
It's insane. All right, so one more player, and then we can wrap this whole thing up. So Brock Bowers' knee issue, so I didn't have my list at first. I'm like, he's been dealing with the knee for a while. He's still been playing, but then he didn't practice today after being limited yesterday. That's something different than what we've seen the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, and the reports that we were looking up, because we were doing a little bit of research before we started recording, said that he injured this after week 1 or during week 1's game, and then may have re-aggravated it this past weekend. We don't know exactly what it is. Maybe it's some type of sprain, could be a chronic issue that has become more acute, causing some inflammation. We're not exactly sure. He was a full participant in 3 practices, though, leading up to last week's matchup. So now you have to wonder, if he can't get in this week, are we going to see him this week? So something certainly worth keeping an eye on. It's 50-50 right now, but if he doesn't do anything on Friday, I'd be hard-pressed to see him out there on Sunday. I would put all my chips in that basket because, like we said, if it got injured week 1 and he toughed it out and practiced and played the next couple weeks, and now he's not, then it sounds like it might have gotten to the point where he needs to sit.
Yeah, which would be really unfortunate because you need your tight ends as much as possible, even though he hasn't been performing to the level that you were hoping for when you drafted him in the first 2 rounds of the draft, which is why I go back and say I never draft tight ends in the first 2 rounds. It never really seems to go to plan unless you had Travis Kelce for all those years. But here's what I will say. If he's out, I'm not like picking up Michael Mayer if he's back or anything like that. It's just a boost for Jacoby Myers. That's all it is. It's a boost for Jacoby Myers and frankly, nothing else. Brian, as always, man, love having you on. I can't believe we actually got through all that in an hour. I didn't think we were going to be able to do it. But why don't you tell everybody where to check you out at and what you got coming up?
Yeah, so you can find me at my X handle, which is down below here, at Injured List Pod. And then theinjuredlist.com, my website, Injured List Podcast on other social media, including Instagram and Facebook. And then, our network, That Sports Podcast Network, which you can see above my head here. I do shows over there at TSS Fantasy on Fridays and Sunday mornings for last-minute injury updates. So check those shows out. You can follow my social media. I usually put out some clips. I'll post some stuff as more information becomes available, as people are talking about injuries and players that are injured. I'll sometimes shoot out some posts. And then I'm going to start doing a little bit of like a Tuesday early week kind of injury assessment summation following the Monday night game. I'll be putting out an episode on Tuesday mornings on my podcast. So you can get that, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. I'm on all the platforms. And that's just going to be a quick kind of summary of some of the weekend's injuries or guys coming off of the weekend and any updates that may have occurred after Sunday's and Monday's games. So that's a new thing I'm going to be doing going forward. I did one this past week after Tyreek Hill's massive injury, and so I'll try and do that for the next couple of weeks going forward, or the rest of the season, I should say.
Awesome. So make sure you're checking out Brian there. You can also catch this show on your favorite podcast app, on the YouTube channel at FF Advice Net, and catch me at Dan Mater FF. We got the sports betting episode coming out tomorrow. I will be writing my article. That'll be out on Saturday on the Huddle. So make sure you're checking out all of those things going into your weekend, because I like to line your pockets green, not just help you win fantasy football leagues. And until then, everybody, good luck. We'll see you soon.